3, 2, 1, action.
Hi, everyone, and welcome again to the Hendrick Hudson School District Central District Board meeting on Wednesday, November 6, 2024. Can we please rise for the pledge of allegiance?
United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, everyone. As you can see, Mr. Trombley is not present with us tonight. He is here. He's on Zoom to participate. We're going to start the meeting with recognition of 3 of our Hendrick Hudson High School students. Mrs. Collins, do you want to? Mike, do you have something to? Can Mike hear us?
So I will introduce our 3 students. These students are commended scholars, and they were recognized as being for their exceptional academic promise demonstrated by their outstanding performance on the qualifying test, which is the PTSA that they took last year. So we are excited to celebrate Alec Elkin, Castalia Litos, and Alexandra Pappas.
So Ms. Scollins, thank you for recognizing Alex Castalia and Alexandra. Just for context, this program and award is based upon their performance on, as Ms. Scollins said, the 2023 PSAT. And of all the high school students across the nation who took this assessment, only 34,000 students reach commended status. So I want to thank our commended scholars for representing Hendrick Hudson so very well. And now we celebrate you, but also want to thank our high school administrators and staff for supporting you in pursuit of your academic excellence. So another round of applause for our commended scholars.
Take a picture. Come stand over here. Why don't you come on frame over there? Shall we open this? Yeah.
Mrs. Collins, do you want to get in there with them? Yes, great. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you for representing Hen Hud so well, and working so hard. I know as a parent that has a college student and a junior how much dedication it takes and how much studying and time it takes. So congratulations to you, and thank you for being here with us tonight.
As we always say, students, you're welcome to stay with us and enjoy the power of government at work, or you can, of course, go home and continue your studies.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated?
Motion.
Second, anyone? Second. All in favor? Now we move on to the audience comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone signed up? All right, then we move on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated? Anyone second? Second. All in favor? That moves us to audience comments on agenda items. Is there anyone signed up for me? No. We move on to our presentation and discussion on student assessment data. I'm going to give the floor to Mike, but I just wanted to thank our administrators for being here tonight with us. Thank you so much for being available in case we have questions, and we appreciate that. All right, get Mike.
I'm sorry, I just told a whole great introduction for about the past 4 minutes. So,
Oh my God.
so I apologize. You may notice that we have a few cabinet members not at the table this evening, including myself, and a few extra special guests in the audience with our principals. While I do want to share everything with the Hendrick Hudson School District, there is a stomach bug ravaging the Trombley household the past couple of weeks, and I don't want to share that with anybody at the table. We in planning for this, we said if we can't have myself or Dr. At the table, we wanted to postpone the presentation. So I sent anybody who was not necessary for the board meeting tonight home without letting the administrators know that they could stay home. So we wanted to make sure we delivered this while they were here because their time is so very valuable, and I made a mistake there. So I apologize for the format and delivery of this presentation, but it's a great presentation to share because we welcomed Ms. Scollins, Mr. Giovinazzi, Mr. Mackin, Ms. Kramer, and Dr. Kramer and Mr. Cohen to help share our 2023-2024 major assessment data results. On the next slide, Greg, we share our mission. Obviously, I'm not going to read that to you because we display it all the time. But I do want to talk about on the next slide our objective. And please read these objectives carefully because that is what we are trying to do this evening and nothing else, just from the presentation. The assessment data that we receive from a myriad of measures is always used to inform instruction, address programs, and to help make decisions. Those of you who deal with data know that you can spin a narrative that you want to tell. That is not our job here. Our job here tonight is to simply present the data that we have and know in the background that our administrators, teacher leaders, they are using this data to make real-time decisions about student experience and our programs. So these are the objectives of this evening. And Greg, if we go to the next slide. This presentation does align to our strategic plan, particularly when we discuss student engagement, clear and targeted communications, we're communicating out the data, and shared decision-making, because a lot of changes that we may make based upon the data that we receive is made in a shared decision-making model for the majority of those decisions. So, Greg, if we can go to the next slide. If you're familiar with Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, this concept is not a value statement. And what we're sharing is not a value statement or judgment of the results, but rather this idea of good to great is a concept of continuous improvement. This melds, if you've been around for some of our presentations that Dr. Bradley Geis gave as well, that we look at data for the sole purpose of continuing to improve as an organization and to impact student outcomes. When it comes to educating our students, we must always know that that is an ongoing process. Good is the enemy of great, as many people say. Greatness cannot function as a circumstance. Greatness, as it turns out, and this is a quote from the book, greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. So I just want to use that to say this is the mindset that we as educators have. In general terms, if I were to share with you assessment results that everybody was excited about, that they said, oh, look how good we are, we would still want to improve. So please know that. So I've shared this slide before, and just as a presentation note, I've been here over a year. You're going to hear a lot of my similar stories and bad jokes. So I'm sorry. The administrative team has to deal with even my Air Force stories that I'm repeating on. So I apologize, but I do want to ground before we present the data in this concept of multiple measures and the role of tests. To measure success, educational researcher Victoria Bernhardt suggests that no one source of data should be used. One measure of data by itself can give useful information, but multiple measures of agreed upon and valued data used together over time provide a much more comprehensive picture. So I say that because I think I shared this story with you. My first board meeting in Mahopac, my previous district, they asked me in public, are we a good district? And I said to them, that depends upon what you value. And I thought I was probably going to be not invited back to the next board meeting. And the board asked me, what are you trying to say? I said, I don't know what you value to say that you are a good district. Based upon the data that I've reviewed, you clearly do not value the New York State assessments because of the opt-out rate that is occurring in your schools. And that's not a judgment statement. It's just what I'm looking at the data. We also talk about the role of tests in this. I have also shared that I'm practically a solid from cholesterol and triglyceride rates, right? And my doctor would always say, this is since I was a child, we need to get your cholesterol rates down and your triglycerides down. And I would say, I challenge you to a push-up contest and to run 6 miles and see who does that better. And my thought process was that, well, it was to be it was to deflect blame and action, but also it was the thought process that the cholesterol check was not the only assessment that he should run about my health. So I just use that when we go for a physical, we don't just stake the value on one assessment measure. Doctors rely on multiple factors when coming to a diagnosis, such as family history, environmental considerations, and their own knowledge as professionals. And we do too as educators. So with that in mind, I will begin sharing the data. And before I share the data, here's the approach that we took. Greg, if you could click on that link and we can move to that presentation. Portion of the presentation, I should say. So all of this is available on board docs. I want to thank Ms. Vanitha Joy for the combining the data within the framework that I requested. Let's skip to the next slide, Greg. So the data we're going to be looking at is on this slide. And the way we are going to approach how we share the data is a 3-year trend data on mastery and passing or proficiency measures. So when we talk about proficiency measures, we'll go into that of what that looks like on the 3 through 8 test. When we talk about on the regents, a mastery rate is a rate of a score of a regents above an 85, and a passing rate for general ed students is 65. And so those are the 2 metrics of the exams that the assessments that I want to look at the trend data. And here's what I'll say and preface. Please try to avoid, we did use the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center average, which takes into consideration all public schools within Rockland, Putnam, and Westchester. We did use that as a baseline metric to provide context. We're not saying that it's great that we're better than them or it's bad that we're worse than them. We're just giving you some context. We'll show you the number of students who took the exam and who fell into the category of their performance rating. And then we'll give you the percentage of overall students. So Greg, if we go to the next slide. This is just a reminder of what the New York State proficiency levels are. In general terms, if a student receives a score of 2, that means they are on track for their grade level. The student receives a proficiency level of 3, they are sufficiently meeting the standards from New York State viewpoints of that assessment. And then a level 4 demonstrates students who excel or are more than sufficient in terms of demonstrating their knowledge as indicated by the assessment on that test. Next slide, please, Greg. So we're going to look at the New York State testing program, ELA grades 3 through 8 next for the 23-24 school year. And I'm not going to speak much on each slide. This slide is on board docs. We will make it publicly available on our website. So I'm not going to insult your intelligence, but I will stop on this one just to explain how to read it. So obviously we have tried to summarize our proficiency rate in grade 3 ELA based upon for our district, which is a 51% in that circle up top. So 51% of our students who took the grade 3 ELA assessment demonstrated proficiency. So that's a level 3 or above. And regionally, 41% of school children demonstrated proficiency. So that's a 3 or above. And then we share the 3-year trend data down below in the chart. So that is how you read these slides. When we get to the regents, I'll clarify because we take into consideration passing versus mastery. But while we're on the grade 3 through 8 assessments, when we talk about what's proficient, it's a 3 or above. And here's the grade 4 ELA. One thing you may consider doing is to avoid that comparison, because that's what a lot of people want to do. But when you compare something, we often say, oh, let's compare a similar school to us because of demographics. Well, remember back to that visual of multiple measures. Demographics is just one component. What is the instructional program made up of? What is their schedule? What is their attendance policy? All those need to be considered as well. So we're going to move to the grade 5 ELA, where we have 54% of our students demonstrating proficiency. And now to the grade 6 ELA. The next slide will bring us to grade 7 ELA. And then in terms of our 3 through 8, the final grade level would be grade 8 ELA proficiency levels. Again, level 3 or above. On the next slide, we'll now transition into our grades 3 through 8 math performance. And so grade 3 math. And then grade 4 math. Then grade 5. Moving on to grade 6. Grade 7. And if I'm going too fast, please just, I can't read the room, obviously. Just tell me to slow down, please. And then finally for grade 3 through 8, grade 8 math. Now on the next slide, we transition to our ELA and math refusal rate for the grades 3 through 8. So these are students who did not take the assessment. So an overall percentage of refusal rate on these assessments for our district was 12% compared to the region of, I'm sorry, for the ELA is 12%. And then for our refusal rate for math is 14%. And just a programming note here, you notice that we did not call it an opt-out. As school districts and agents of the state of New York, we have to support students in taking the tests, and we are not allowed to communicate that these tests are optional. Parents can, of course, decide for themselves, but we are not allowed to do that because that could put us subject to loss of funding, because these assessments are used for the New York State Education Department to access federal dollars to support education. And then Greg will go to the next slide. So on the next few slides, we will be going through our 24-25 fall ELA benchmark. So previous slides had us explore the 23-24 assessments delivered in the spring from the state. These assessments are from the fall benchmark that we just completed. So this comes from the iReady assessment data. And we are categorizing them by subject area of ELA, the student by grade of if they are above grade level, they are early on grade level, 1 grade below grade level, 2 grades below grade level, or 3 or more grades below grade level. Oh, sorry.
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to ask a clarifying question about this, the iReady specifically.
Yes. Greg, I
When
think
you
you need to advance scores a little bit. There you go. Yes,
When
President
you-
Mills.
When you see 78%, and I know we're supposed to hold question, but I think this is important to clarify. When the kids are sitting in front of an iReady test, are they being tested on content from the prior year or content for the year that they're going into the year?
I'm going to ask just for clarification because this is my first year using the iReady assessments. I'll ask some of our elementary principals to weigh in, or I'll say what I believe and they can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that the fall benchmark exposes students, if they're in grade 1, they're being exposed to grade 1 standards in the fall with not necessarily a direct predictability, but it's assessing them on grade 1 content, even if they may not have had it yet.
Okay, that makes this make a lot more sense, I think.
And I will confirm that that is correct.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. It makes
welcome.
this make so much more sense looking at it.
Yep. So in other words, for that grade 1 ELA, students were exposed to standards and questions aligned to those performance indicators within those standards on what they may be exposed to in the spring.
Can I also ask a clarifying question then to go back to the state test?
Yes.
When you were talking about the refusals, is it true that the refusals are considered to be then a score of level 0, which
That
goes
is
into
correct towards our
proficiency rate?
Yes. So that's great. That's a great point. So if we can go back to that refusal rate slide, what that is showing is that the way we have this displayed for this presentation is that if we look at our grade 8 math that has 41% of our students as a level 3 or above, that is also taking into that total calculation any of the refusals who are marked as a 0.
I have another question similar to this.
Sorry.
Do our advanced 8th grade algebra students take the 8th grade maths test?
I'm going to ask Mr. Giovanazzi to answer that question.
No, they do not.
Okay, so they do not take it. Do they count as zeros as well?
No,
Coded different.
I just want to.
it goes, so then the regions will be their state test, but it's not in that
Perfect.
data.
Clarifying question. The students that are flagged for Russian on the iReady, when we no longer use those scores, are they in here?
On the
So-
refusal rate or on the iReady?
So
Results.
if students are flagged on iReady, that the test is not an accurate assessment because they rushed through the iReady.
Yeah, they are there, and I have a list of how many kids per grade level were flagged for Russian.
Okay, we're gonna hold that. We'll come back to that. Thank you for having that, Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Giovanazzi.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay. We're going to go now to the fall benchmark for F&P. So this is Fontes and Pinnell.
Can you take a second? Can someone explain Fontes and Pinnell and as what it is? I think everyone understands iReady is the online assessment tool that we use. What Fontes and Pinnell is and how it's administered to the students?
It's a running record.
Thank you.
So students are given a reading sample.
Where's that, Mike?
Oh, okay. I was going to
So-
try to, I was going to try to be the smart social studies teacher who learned literacy.
Go for it.
We'll give you the expert.
The F&P assessment is administered one-on-one, one student at a time by the teacher. And it could also be referred to as a running record. So they start at the reading level that they think the child is reading at. And they have them do a reading sample, they keep track of miscues, and then they assess their comprehension. And they give them a score that shows whether it's instructional, independent, or frustrational, or too hard. So based on that, the grades or the scores that are included here are instructional levels, the percentages that you're seeing. So if they get an independent level, they would go one higher and do the same process with another reading selection until they get to what we refer to as the instructional level, which is where the teacher will be teaching the child moving forward.
Cindy,
Yes.
question. F&P measures fluency and basic comprehension.
Correct.
Is it true that you can score high on an F&P but still not be flagged because you have gaps in vocabulary or critical thinking?
The FNP is one measure. As Mike said, we use multiple measures, which is why we have the iReady, which is a different type of
Right,
test.
so iReady is really to measure vocabulary and phonics, correct?
iReady has several subtests that include vocabulary and phonics, yes.
But, because if we look at some of this data, some students form proficient on F and P, but their iReady scores say that they're not at grade level.
That could be, and vice versa as well.
And the F and P is subjective because it's administered by a teacher.
Yes, to an extent, absolutely. Okay, you're welcome.
Hey, Mike. Make sure I'm muted.
Yeah, I think you thought Dr. Kramer was just gonna finish.
I apologize. I'm back. We'll move to the next slide. So this would be our fall iReady benchmark for the math grades grades 1 through 8. And Cindy and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, as I'm still getting to learn the programs. We do not use iReady in kindergarten. We use another assessment called ESGI, correct?
Correct.
And that tests different items such as text readiness, those types of matters.
Sounds, letter names. It's like a,
Is that, sorry to interrupt again, is that on a computer or is that teacher based?
with the teacher and they input it on the computer.
Thank you.
That's a program that can actually be used for early reading and early literacy skills. And for the kindergartens, as Mr. Cohen said, they give it, they code it with the teacher and then the teacher inputs the data so it's easily sortable to help inform instruction. Okay, we will move on to the next slide, which looks at where our students fall in terms of above, on, or below grade level.
No, you're not sleeping in it.
Sorry. All right, and we'll move on to the next slide, which will start our sharing of data from the 23-24 New York State regions. And this would be from the June assessment window. So we'll start out with our Common Core ELA. And again, we have our passing rate at the top, summarized at the top as well in the two circles. But we're also delineating further because on a Regents, if you receive a 65 or above, that's considered passing. Mastery of the standards and the skills associated within that assessment is considered 85 above. So the top chart that you're looking at is saying the percentage of students and the number of students who achieved a 65 or above. And the bottom chart is telling you how many achieved an 85% or above.
I have a clarifying question here. Is the 148 in the top one, the number of students that took it? And then the bottom one is 93 of those 148 who got mastery?
No, the 148 is the number of students who scored at least a 65 or above out of the total students that took it. And that shows you the percent, the 94 shows us out of the students who took it, what that 148 represents, which is 94% of the students who took the assessment.
The junior class last year was larger than 148 students, and the honors students take that as well, right?
Yeah.
So you're adding those two for the total number?
No, it's that the kids that didn't score a 65 are not included in that. Right? Okay.
And the mastery shows of all of the students who took the Common Core ELA assessment, the number of them that scored an 85 or above, and what that number represents out of the total number of students, the percentage of out of the total number of students who took that assessment. And we'll go on to the next Regents exam. So this is our algebra 1.
Can I make a side note here for the Algebra 1 Regents?
Of course.
That was a new Regents with a new, it used to be 37 questions, now it was 35, and they changed the standard. So this was a brand new Regents that was actually given on June 4th. So a couple weeks earlier than the other, with new standards put in. And the same is supposed to be happening this year for geometry, this, June 2025, and then June 2026, the same for Algebra 2. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So if the numbers look different, that may be a reason why.
Yes,
And
you
why
notice
don't-
that we do not have our trend data for this one. Because it's
Because it's a
not
brand new
comparable.
Regents. That was a
It's not
brand new
comparable, correct.
And there was no Regents before this, like there was no practice Regents put out before this as well. Just want to let everyone be aware of that.
And if we move on to the global history, we have a similar item when in 2022, we began implementing a new assessment, but we do have multiple years to compare that to. So global history is, as you may know, is a 2-year course culminating in a Regents in the 2nd year. And we'll move on to our next assessment, the U.S. History and Government Framework, which was a new exam in 2023. So we only have 2 years of trend data to compare, because you would be comparing apples to oranges if you went back to 2022.
Wasn't it which wasn't this one the one that was canceled in 2023?
No, they
2022, I believe.
they pulled a
Oh,
question.
you're right,
It was-
2022.
In 23, they just had a question that they gave everyone points for though.
Yeah, 22 was the canceled one.
Yes.
That was supposed to be the new one.
It was supposed to be the first year of the new exam, but they ended up canceling the Regents. And then on our next slide, our living environment, passing and mastery rates. And then our next slide is our earth science. And when we transition to our next slide, chemistry. And it's important to note that some of our Regents are not mandatory. And in my superintendent's report, I'll give you an update on perhaps the future of the Regents exams too.
I'm also curious if students and parents know that some of these tests are not mandatory.
Yes, so for instance, this is not a mandatory exam. Along with the next assessment, which is our physics exam.
What has it always been that way? Yes and no. I mean, there's graduation requirements. Yeah,
Depends on what diploma you're going for.
And it's all gonna change in 2027. That right now.
Yes. So currently, the district offers a local diploma, a Regents diploma, and an advanced a Regents diploma with an advanced designation. And each one of those has different thresholds in terms of the assessments that you would need to qualify for each of those thresholds.
do we, if we have a physics class and the kids don't take the test, do we lose funding for them not taking that test?
No.
And if they don't take the test at the end of this, how do we score them? Because it's 20% of their grade.
I'll ask Ms. Scollins to go into that detail and to share some of the discussions that she's currently having.
Their end results, like.
So that is currently under review, and we are in process working with Blue Mountain to look at that percentage and decoupling, as we heard from the Regents, decoupling the Regents scores from the final average and creating a different type of assessment. So that may look like a local exam or a project.
And that's what those students, oftentimes, they take a different type of regents or a different local exam. Moving forward, we're having conversations, especially with around our plan pilot work, which is really based in performance-based assessments and having our students experience multiple measures of assessment. We had our first PD session this week with our leadership team for the plan pilot, where they came in and started to talk about using rubrics in those performance-based assessments and how do we align those with more nationally normed type of assessment practices. So that's going to change, as we heard too.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. So, President Mills, and the federal government lays out for the states what the assessment requirements are to access federal funding, and therefore states have expectations of local educational agencies or local school districts. In general term, the federal government for funding to be shared requires that states must administer annual assessments in reading and math for grades 3 through 8 and once in grades 9 through 12. This is just the federal minimum. Districts also must administer annual science assessments at least once in grades 3 through 5, 6 through 9, and 10 through 12. So as long as we meet those criteria from a federal standpoint, federal funding can still flow.
All right, that's good to know.
And the work that Ms. Scollins and her team are doing, as well as some of our other administrators, and taking a look at summative assessments, is really trailblazing in terms of the state is going to have us consider this anyway, and we're already a couple months into that conversation as well. So in our next slides, we'll discuss the 23-24 AP results. So in no particular order, except maybe alphabetical, we'll share the AP exams. With the grand total of students taking them, those students who scored a 3 or above, and then a percentage passing with the 3 or above of those total overall students who took the exam. So in our AP biology line, you see that we had a total of 14 students sit for the exam. 11 of those 14 students passed the exam, and that represents 78.6% of the students who took it had a 3 or 5, a 3 or 4 or 5. And just so the community, the board and the community know, we did share this presentation with our teachers union leadership to make sure that they were aware that we were presenting this data to the public, because this is not a gotcha. This is here's the data. Let's take a look at how we can continuously improve what we're doing.
And this is only the kids that sat for the test, not necessarily the students in the classroom, because the students in the classroom don't always take the AP exams, correct?
Correct. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll look at our calculus, ABBC, stats, and computer science. In our next slide, we continue on with humanities assessments in terms of AP Euro, AP US, and AP World. And then if we move on to our next slide, we have language and other assessments. And we didn't do any comparative data for the fact of the matter is that school districts, even in the state of New York, offer their assessments at different grade levels. For instance, there are some districts who offer AP Euro in 12th grade. There's some school districts across the nation that mandate that students sit for the exam if they take the assessment. There are some districts in New York State that do that. There are some districts that pay the fee for students to take the assessment because on some other metrics, it doesn't matter the score on the assessment, but schools are recognized for the number of students sitting for the exam, not as actually their outcomes.
Can students take these tests even if they're not in the class and just register to take them? And
Yes.
we had that happen, right?
Yes.
Did the AP exams change on how they score them?
They're rolling that out. Certain ones are changing.
I thought some had already changed because someone's,
There are certain ones that have changed. I don't know specifics for which ones have, but there are, like AP Bio this year is gonna be different. AP Research and Seminar was different last year because that was the first year.
I just recalled some AP teachers saying that it was easier for some of their students to receive higher grades because the scoring changed.
Some of them, they're rolling it out in the piece. But I don't know how it changes. It's
Being experienced with AP grading, I also want to mention this. This was said at an AP grading training that I attended. If every student in the country scored the exact same grade of 100 on the exam, the College Board would delineate a certain number of students will be a 1, a certain number of students will be a 2, a certain number of students will be a 3, and a certain number of students will be a 4, and a certain number of students will be a 5. So that's important to keep in mind because their cut scores vary depending upon nationwide outcomes.
Like a curve, so to speak.
Right.
Well, not necessarily a curve, because if I scored 100 and Miss Scollins scored 100, depending upon where they put my name in that particular example, which is unlikely to happen, but extremes often can explain the approach. It wasn't because of it's a curve, it's just I got placed as a 1 and Miss Scollins was placed as a 5.
But if you all got 100s on the same test, you're all gonna get that 5, and then it works backwards from there as far as the portions of the kids that get the 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, correct?
No, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. If by some odd miracle nationwide everybody scored 100% or even the same grade on the exam, they would implement cut scores that would categorize people into a 1, 3, 4, or 5. But there's no cut scores if we all had the same grades. They would just assign test takers to that.
Okay.
Now that's an extreme example, and I don't think it's ever happened before, but it does show you that there is, from the AP, from the College Board grading, there is some approach to implementing cut scores. We want to share with you some data on number of students who have applied for and earned the seal of biliteracy, which demonstrates their proficiency of language, multiple language expertise, and then also their civic readiness in terms of civic participation and civic impact. And so if we go to that slide. I will use this time while you're reading that to again share another story you probably heard. A few years ago, I was fortunate enough to attend a program called the Educational Policy Fellowship Program, which asked us as selected participants to come up with a policy statement. Myself and a colleague who is at the table were in a group together where we came up with a capstone performance-based project for students to demonstrate their civic mindedness. And there was a regent at the time in the class. And at that time, there was not a seal of civic readiness. Part of our approach was to have a capstone project that would be perhaps a diploma seal. And voila, I'm not saying we invented it, but you can think about that on your own.
We didn't copyright that, Mike.
What's that?
We didn't copyright it.
We did not copyright it. We probably should have. And I also want to recognize that we have 2 of our current staff members participating in that same program, Ms. Scollins and then Christina Field. So they're exploring the impact of policy on education. So, and then moving on to the next slide. We will, I want to thank everybody for allowing me time to present the data, and I will yield to board questions at this time.
I have a question just on assessments, science 5 and 8. Do we do that? The state test for science grades 5 and grade 8?
We did not put together that data. We're happy to share that and add to the deck. Greg, could you please go back to the presentation, the blue slide deck, and go to slide number 8, please. We'd be happy to put that data together and share out.
8th graders need living better.
All of them? Oh, awesome. And then geometry and algebra, we don't offer those regions?
Algebra 2?
Algebra 2, sorry, yeah,
We
algebra 2
have a
and
small population of students who take that exam.
It's very small.
very, very small. Part of the pattern.
Stephanie?
I just wanted to know, at the building level, what insights have you guys gained from analyzing these results?
I can share that during our early release day, on October 28th, our ELA and math department were given this data, and they were to meet as a department and go through a data protocol, to look at what the facts are, to interpret the data, what the implications are for classroom practice, how to improve upon that, to put an action plan in place, and to ask for us for what support that they need. Those conversations will continue. I plan on sharing this data also at our next faculty meeting, and we have a team leader meeting next week, and I'm going to share that as well. So conversations will be driven through the data that was just shared with us, as well as digging deeper into the data, like you pointed out, how many kids rush through iReady, how many IEP kids are involved, how many kids are getting AIS services, how many kids are in our tier 2 support classes. So this is very informative for me as the leader of the building, to work with our departments and to work with our instructional leaders, and really see where we can improve.
And will teachers bring those suggestions back, and maybe we can hear what they need?
Yes. I can share with you the protocol that was put in place with them if you'd like to see that. But there are going to be ongoing conversations. I know regarding math, there's also the K through 12 math review. I know in the 6th grade, if I'm not mistaken, Margaret is looking at possibly piloting a new curriculum for 6th grade, that ELA, that kind of goes along with what was being done or what is being done at the elementary level. So all these things are being looked at and discussed.
I'll piggyback that at the high school too, looking at course offerings, you know, we've seen some, you know, struggles with Algebra 1, for example, and math over the trend data for the last few years. So we worked with the curriculum committee last year to put together a pre-algebra class. So students who maybe come to 9th grade and aren't ready to achieve at Algebra 1, there's a 2-year course for them. So taking this data, looking at it and saying, what can we do with our course offerings to make sure that we're supporting students? We have students who are really successful in our AP Psych scores. How can we get those students college credits for that as well? So this year, our students in AP Psych, they'll be able to take the AP as well as earn credit through SUNY Potsdam for those courses. So really, what can we do to support our students because they're doing such good work, and how can we get them those college credits for the work that they're doing? Because sometimes the AP doesn't always reflect that work that they're doing in the classes, but if we can get them those college credits and they can walk out the door with that.
Some,
So using that.
some universities and colleges only take a set number of credits, right?
Right, I know that.
Some don't take AP exams at all. So some take AP credits and college credits. So it's like you just, every school is a little different, so it's good to offer, I think it's good to offer different variations, because those students would take the AP Psych exam as well as the college level.
Yep.
Course.
Or one or the other.
Mrs. Collins, have you seen any need at the high school to implement a foundational English course that would address writing, phonics, grammar, punctuation, if there's a gap for students from 8th grade to 9th grade, so they can actually handle the work that's required of them in high school?
We've had conversations about through our MTSS team. This year, we were able to increase the number of English AIS classes. So we have more students who are able to meet in a smaller group with our English teachers to focus on specific skills based on a targeted skill.
Do you ever foresee maybe implementing a course?
I think that if we look at the data and that we present that to the curriculum council, of course. We have our handheld life course right now, which is really supporting our students in their executive functioning and in those bits and pieces of transitioning our students into the high school. And I think that's been really successful. So I think that's always a good discussion.
I think the transitional grades are tough also because those kids have left your building. So that data is being looked at by the receiving building. And I think there has to be a mechanism for us to have those two buildings that are handling that transition in grade look at the data, because it just can't be the high school receiving 8th graders and triaging issues like reading and grammar and phonics and writing. We have to change what we're doing in the grade that's sending them. if the data is telling us that. And that I think that has to be a conversation with those two grades in transition. You know, that sending grade needs to understand the data that they're not always necessarily looking at, because they're gone, those kids are gone, they're
Right.
going to the next level.
I agree with Jim 100% with the transition from our eighth graders to the ninth grade. And Lauren and I have met with Chris Marino about even having teachers visit the high school to see what's going on in classes, what the high school's expectations are. And then having the high school teachers come down as well to talk to the eighth graders, toward the spring, and work with the eighth grade teachers to really focus on what they're looking for when the kids move up to the high school. So I totally agree with what Jim is saying as far as that transition piece.
So our building administrators are bringing up great points, and if not to beat a dead horse, but when we look at comparative, if you pull out to national data, there are some states that don't deliver their standardized assessments in the spring. They deliver it in the fall for the previous year. So you can think about the different perspectives and how that might be used differently to inform instruction.
I wanted to ask a question for grades 3 to 8 with the state test. Now that it's on the computer, this is my work. I have my grade 8 that's on the computer and my algebra 1 that's on paper. And the way that assessments are done, so that the day that they're, because I know taking a test on a computer is wildly different than taking a test on paper. And I know that we're doing like iReady, which is on the computer. Are we continually throughout the year giving them like assessments, like state-like assessments, on a computer, so that by the time May comes around for them to take the math test, they're comfortable with the tools? Because again, writing math on paper is very different than using the tools on there. So are we training them throughout the year to be able to do
So
that?
this was a big worry for me, being the newbie to this level. Benita did provide a CBT training kind of software that allowed students to go on and get comfortable with the tools for math, how to use the ELA tools as well. It was good, it was better than nothing, but I don't know how in depth it was, when I looked at it. And it only gave you a couple of sample questions, so literally the teacher would have to, give a paper question on paper, and then the kids could use the tools to do that. So I think it's beneficial. I think the kids did okay with the.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just wondering if it could have been better, like, are there programs, which there are programs out there, are there programs though that your teachers would like? Because that could be something, especially when we're talking budget season, like, are there online programs that they would like as assessment tools so that they can practice, not just on the CBT, that one thing, because there's the 3 samplers they have. How many times can you give those 3 samplers, and they haven't been updated in years to even reflect the next gen? Are there other programs though that your teachers would like? I wonder, can you bring that?
I'm sure there
up?
is. I think the big
Yeah.
conversation that I'm hearing is that we're experiencing fatigue, technology fatigue. And you brought up iReady and the rushing through it. I think we have saturated our students with so much technology that they're sick of it.
I know, I just feel like
For lack of a better term, it doesn't change what we need to prepare them for. But I think before we go and look at another program, I'm more interested in that they can actually do the math.
No, I know, I just feel like we assess them, let's say, like, it would be like teaching a kid to write in print all year, and then the day of the test, like, can you do this in script?
I get it.
Because then, did it really assess them on what they know, or was it a computer issue, I wonder
Right,
as
and
well?
that's the problem, right? That's the problem we're dealing with, because we don't have an option.
How many?
Which is odd because of the point you made, high school.
Then when you go to high school, it's back on paper.
Yeah, everything in high
Here's what I'll ask of our principals in the next few weeks. We really get into the budget development at the building and department level. As we go through that, that's a question we can have our buildings and departments ask of our teachers to consider on their initial wish list for budget enhancements or additions to the budget.
I just want to add that last year when we were in curriculum, we discussed the kids actually having a computer class. Because research shows that if the kids are comfortable with a computer, if they know how to type, if they know how to use the mouse, they perform better on computer-based tests. To your point, if they're not comfortable with the computer, they perform better on paper tests. But I would rather stop the program, like, instead of putting them on like another iReady program. I don't know, I think it would be valuable, we were talking in curriculum about actually having instruction. I know at the high school level, you used to, I think it was an old teacher there, Margaret Koch. No, can't say it, used to have a business teacher that I was friends
Thank you.
with, that I used to visit, that had a wonderful program that she taught the kids computer skills and how to type.
So I just want to point out that Vanitha is texting me, as dedicated as she is, that the Linkit online assessment that we're rolling out and the SkillStruck program that we're implementing both have test practice solutions online. Thank you, Vanitha, for listening.
One of my
Which-
questions for the elementary is just, I guess, once we identify like the different areas from the test scores, like what are we doing internally to work on just trying to hone in on those and address those issues in the classrooms as well? Or just.
I already said a lot, do that.
I'll talk about our data meetings a little bit, and if you want to add anything, Cindy. So every 3 weeks, we meet on a subject. So like if ELA was today, we meet again in 3 weeks, and it's with our coaches and every teacher and our AIS teachers all together. And we do think about the multiple measures, because, you know, if we have an iReady score, but, you know, were they just clicking? You know, what do we know about them? What are we seeing in the day-to-day performance? What are we seeing on the F&P? You know, was it reading? Was it comprehension? Was it accuracy? So we're having these conversations about children in general. We're also talking about trends. You know, what does that mean for your grouping? You know, oh, these two have similarities. Maybe I'll pull them together. So these are formally every 3 weeks for ELA, formally every 3 weeks for math, on top of what we're doing with our own teachers when the coaches are traveling to other buildings.
And that's a process that was embedded in elementary, you know, coming from the high school, it wasn't as structured as what I'm experiencing here, where they've been looking at data for years, you know, and talking about kids in a more structured environment or framework than I experienced as a high school principal, which was nice.
And right now, as we just finished the benchmarking, we're working with our reading teachers and the classroom teachers to see which students require a little more support. So parents may receive letters in the coming weeks saying your child qualifies for extra reading support. This is who the teacher's going to be. This is when they're going to be meeting, and same for math. So we're using that data to really target those kids who are struggling and who are behind to help catch them up, as well as adjusting instruction in the classroom for the trends that we see on a more global level.
Right, and I can share with them, we had our math coach and our math data meetings today. So our math coach met with every grade level, and she had taken the data from Lincoln, provided them with kids that fell within the criteria of not meeting the standard, and they might go into AIS, and then she asked them for anecdotal data as well. You know, what are you seeing in class? How are they acting? How are they participating? Whatever anecdotal, and that's all captured. So when we meet as a team with my coaches and things like that, we're able to take some of that into account. It's another point of data that we consider. Our teachers have a lot of valuable information that sometimes the numbers don't tell us. You know, it's conflicting sometimes. So we have mechanisms where we're able to, if we feel as though what the teacher is saying is contrary to what the test scores are saying, sometimes we'll throw a kid into a support for a few weeks to just make sure.
Yeah, Jim, sometimes there's behavioral, social, emotional things that are getting in the way of the learning. So these come up at the meeting, and then we decide who are the best people to help change those behaviors.
Are there any tools that parents that you guys ever recommend, like outside of like AIS, is there any tools that parents can use at home too? Like if, you know, on the weekend, like is there programs you can log on to, like their ClassLink thing, or do they not have access to that outside of the classroom?
Here's great question, Trustee Dietrich. I will ask Margaret and Vanitha to ask our math coach and ELA coach to begin to compile a list of resources that are open and available to our students to use at home.
I believe if you go on our math coach's site off of the district site, there is a host of places that you can go as a parent already. I mean, it's extensive. So,
And I think,
And the parents know this.
I think, I know that you
was
can,
my
I was gonna
next
say,
question.
yeah.
It's like,
How's
we
that
should, it's
communicated?
something we should share with them so they
Yeah.
know,
I
like, you
think
know,
that-
some kids when they're home,
She
they
did-
wanna just do
People
something.
shared last year.
Oh,
I was gonna say there was one,
Communication was
like one in math, what's that new program you guys got, like one in math or
first.
first in math, like, one in math. I know that can be used, I know, I failed. That can be used like at home. I think if you do go on the class link, it should be able to go.
And the other thing I'd say, because, you know, read with them, do flashcards. I think sometimes we overthink this, but just my feeling is that, if you're reading with your children or reading while they're reading at the same time, you don't necessarily have, as kids get older, they don't want you to read to them, they want, but if you're modeling, hey, I'm a reader. They see that, and if you set aside just 10-15 minutes to say, hey, I'm gonna read my book, you read your book or whatever. And then flashcards, like, I don't know if you've heard, but I walk around at dismissal sometimes with flashcards, just asking kids to do the flashcards as they're getting on the bus. They love it, but it's helpful because they don't always have that skill, that rote skill of being able to do, addition, subtract, all that stuff, so. I think we overthink it sometimes.
Good basic.
Mika, one thing to go back to your original question about how is this used operationally, I want to thank the principals for showing just how much work is done at the building level to take this and other types of data to really approach a personalized learning experience for our students, knowing what they need individually. That's really tough work. That's the essence of teaching, and that's what makes teaching so difficult, that you have 20 to 30 students, 20 to 26 students or 8 students in your class that all may have different needs, and we're all in the same place. So that learning or looking at the data is one component of adjusting our instruction. Operationally, you can think of, we used to be provided reports on item analysis from the state assessments, where you could drill down to the question itself and look at how students in your grade did in the previous year. So you could perhaps look at, and it also links it to the standard and performance indicator of that standard, that conversations could occur saying, why did our students fail on, Amelia, don't get mad at me, on improper fractions? Is that a good math term?
Sure.
Why on every standard or performance indicator that was linked to improper fractions did our students struggle? And you could say, and conversations among teachers just looking at that say, well, maybe we just need to change where in terms of our scope and sequence we provide those learning exposures, because they may not be gaining the skill that they need to do that particular mathematical skill or concept.
I have a question. AIS support, that started in September, correct?
For students who were in the spring and don't qualify for support.
So they
They
will
roll
go.
over from the spring.
So now I'm a parent sitting at home. What data here are you using as your referral process for AIS now for new students?
And what qualifies them to roll over?
Yes.
So they roll over if they end the year in, or they qualify through the criteria in the spring benchmark. So if they don't meet the criteria to be proficient, they.
What benchmark though? I ready?
FFP, I ready, and the math, that's the math assessment that was developed.
And what math assessment is that?
That was developed by the math coach.
Based on.
Based on Eureka Swinner.
So how about AIS reading? How would you exit out of there?
We have a chart with levels, of what's approaching, what qualifies for AIS, different tiers, and then
So
when
what
there's a little in each.
Are
So
you
FFP
using
and I
that
ready.
reading or FFP?
Oh,
Both, everything is multiple measures.
But what if a child is flagged and I ready for brushing? Then you would just be using the FFP.
we can administer an additional test. Sometimes we'll use Ames Web as an additional tiebreaker. if there's discrepancies between the two scores.
So I'm a parent, new to the district. I come in September and I feel that my child is struggling. Do I have to wait for all of these assessments to get them into AIS?
Not necessarily, because you're coming from a district and your child's records will come with them. And there may be something in that file that indicates that that student would qualify for our services and our criteria. Yeah, it's not a single answer to your question. There's a lot of what ifs.
What if I'm a parent and I feel that my child should not be exited from services?
Well, we're trying to get away from the field. We're trying to get more towards the data
So how do you convey that to parents that, okay, this is the data and this is why you're exited from services? What would you get as a parent?
You get an exit letter or an entry letter that your child is entering, you're exiting AIS.
But is that all that it tells you?
It gives the letter that I sent has the reasoning behind it.
So it would give you a level.
Doesn't necessarily, we don't put the levels on there, but they exit on level or
But-
above, yeah.
A parent could meet with the teacher and ask for that information, and that could be shared.
So we're using iReady, I'm trying F&P as part of the AIS and Ames Web if they rushed on the iReady.
It's not just if they rushed, if there's like,
Is it-
one is saying one, one's saying the other, and it could go either way.
And if we look at this data, you've seen that time and time again.
And in the younger grades, there's also the ESGI, which warehouses like the letter sounds, letter names. And
So if I'm not mistaken, we have a higher rate of refusal rate, Mike, than the regional for your state test, correct?
Yes, but that is actually, that's actually not a high refusal rate. Obviously, we want it down to 0, right? But
So here's bridging my gap here. I don't understand how the state test figures in to your AIS process, because to me, that's not really a benchmark that you're using. Right? Where do we use the state test scores?
Yeah, it's one of the measures at the 3 through 5.
So at the 3 through 5,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't have it at the K through 2. There is no K through 2 state assessment.
but how about at the middle? I only ask this because I've never, ever has the state test gone over with me as a parent. No one's explained the results to me or what it means.
Never.
I know sometimes we got an email that it's on backpack, but I'm not an elementary school teacher, so it really doesn't make much sense.
Mhm.
Your F&P levels as a parent,
Mhm.
and I'm an educator, doesn't really, Jim, I'm high school.
Okay.
So that, I had to look that up,
Believe me, I understand.
but I'm not really seeing. Maybe at the elementary school, it's used more, but I didn't have that experience. That the state test was really used in the referral process for AIS. Would that be a fair
One-
statement?
Right, at the high school level, years ago, if you did not pass the Regents exam, that was the qualifier
Right.
for you getting AIS at the secondary level. I
So this-
believe that's still in place, but I don't know about the elementary level, I'm just being honest, I don't think that's something that happens at the elementary.
So here's something to consider as well too. The state regulations are that you may consider the state assessments as part of the identification for AIS. And also remember, there was a period of a couple years where we couldn't use it because of where we were in COVID, but this is definitely good information we'll take back as a team. And it's good for me to know what each building and grade level does for its AIS process. And that's a good conversation to have at one of our administrative team meetings so that we all have an understanding of what's occurring at various grade levels and come to make sure that we all have a good understanding of that.
I just
I
want
think
to add
so.
something about what I know teachers are doing. They're not saying, you're an L, you're a 150, but they're saying, here are some sight words that you need to work on, work on blending. So they're equipping families with the skills and things they can practice, which goes back to what Tamika had said before, rather than putting them into a letter or a number.
The elementary school does an excellent job at explaining your levels when you meet with them for parent-teacher conferences. They go over your iReady. They go over what an F&P is, you know, what the score means. I mean, kind of all goes out of your head when you leave. So when you hear those letters again, it's extremely confusing for a parent because you don't know what they correlate to.
Right, and they're really not meant for a parent, to be honest with you. They're meant for educators to guide us, and that's why Josh was talking about sharing skill deficiencies or areas where students need to work on. That's the language that parents are supposed to receive, not an L or you're a 470 on an iReady, because that's a very emotional kind of thing, right? We're assigning a number to your child, and if it's at the lower end of the range, you know, if it's the higher end of the range, we'll celebrate that, but those numbers are really not intended for parents to analyze. When you get the parent report, I know when I got my kids, it's like, what is this? Like, I don't understand it. It's a whole bunch of gobbledygook and, you know, I think it's for educators. I think everybody here would agree.
But
It's hard. It's hard.
I think as a parent, when you go on to board docs, you go into the academic intervention service policy. And if we look at that policy, it says that we use state test scores
But I was just gonna clarify.
and multiple measures.
Yeah,
We
so
do
the
use
state,
multiple.
I just wanna clarify for public at home. Just because your child gets a level 1 or level 2 does not automatically qualify them for AIS. It has to be if they got a level 2 and these other pieces support that they are really not at grade level. But if, let's say, the student was in class getting 80s, 90s and scoring high, the state says maybe your child got a level 2 because they had a bad testing day. On that test day, that does not qualify you for AIS. It has to be the multiple measures. So just getting a level 1
No,
or level 2,
absolutely.
I'm clarifying for at home, it does not mean you get AIS.
So when we look at the data that Denise has done a great job with the new Linkit program, I'm able to look at a dashboard screen and it has the iReady score for the spring and the fall. It has the F&P for the spring and the fall. And then if there is a state test score, it's there. I'm gonna tell you, it's not considered heavily in the conversation. It's kind of a reference point, you know? But again, these are all points, I think you just made the point of kid could have a bad testing day.
Yeah, but they didn't
Brought
even
up
breakfast,
multiple
yeah.
times, kid rushing through.
And just to add further clarification, it's not the level itself that would be considered for AIS as part of the multiple measures, whether it be running record, iReady, classroom performance. It's a cut score that can be determined. So in addition to the levels that we receive, New York State releases after the tests are released, cut score levels that align to, it's even drilled down further than just a 1, 2, 3, or a 4. It's within those 1, 2, 3, or 4 specific levels that should be considered for AIS. So each level corresponds to a specific cut score out of a, correct me if I'm wrong, it's out of a 700 score?
So then I'm under the misconception that to qualify for AIS, you had to be 2 levels behind, 2 grade levels behind. Is that not true?
There's criteria set by the district. Margaret would probably be the best one to explain exactly how she determines.
But I'm wondering if it's 2 grade levels, like consistent data, not just from one measure, like it has to be 2 grade levels from, I'm going to assume then 2 grade levels on the state test, the iReady, the F&P, like it would have to be on not just one of the items.
You are correct.
It sounds as if it would be beneficial to, at our next board meeting, part of our work session is that we asked Dr. Ruller to provide an overview of AIS practices.
Yeah, I mean, my questions were around, when does AIS kick in? How many students did we roll over from last year into this year? We're at week 8 and the benchmark data is just completed, right? So when does AIS services start? Are they push in? Are they pull out? How much time does each student get? Do we have a cutoff? Like, I think I think this is kind of where this conversation is going here. What's our cutoff? Do we only put the lowest 10% in AIS services? Is it 15%? Is it 20%? How is that done? I think we also have to look at what the middle school and high school are doing for AIS services. Are they getting, we implemented them last year. Did we see a return on it? That's the AIS conversation. I think it's also beneficial for us to understand when does MTSS kick in? Because these things help us understand, do we have what's best for students? Are we offering what we need to for our students to show improvement in these scores, right? That's what we want to get to.
And then it goes back to what everyone in the audience said. When you're meeting with the teachers, they obviously are on the front line. They know what they see and what they need. And if there's a need there, what are we gonna do about it?
And I wrote a question down and for middle school, high school, more high school, I think. I mean, we have a significant number of students that are failing. You have to pass some of these tests to graduate. Algebra 1, if they don't have a core in Algebra 1 and they don't have that basic math, what are we doing to make sure that they are learning and they have that, we bridge that gap? And are we just pushing them through, like they fail AP US history because they have to take it? Are we pushing them through? How are we making sure they have those concepts?
So I think it's twofold, and part of that is the grading conversation that we're having at the high school, and that with the grading task force, the parents yesterday. To look at what are the grades, how are we communicating student progress so that it's not, I get to the grade and said, oh, surprise, I failed. We cited Algebra 1 last year, meeting with the teachers and seeing the need of a group of students who, in order to help bridge that gap, we created an Algebra 1 over 2-year program for those students. So that we can make sure they have those foundational skills. I think to the point before, we also need to share a little bit more widely, and while this will be changing, there are multiple pathways to graduation. So our students they're required to take 4 regents. And then after that, they can also do the seal of biliteracy, they can do a CDOS pathway, they can do the seal of civic readiness, so that we are building those foundational skills in different ways. So it's not just that I have to get through this US history class. And really looking at what are our course offerings and are they supporting what students need?
And we are offering January Regents exams for students that can take them. We offer them in August as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Did we see growth there? And the kids that failed, like what did we do in between the kids that failed in June to the kids that took it in August?
So
These
we
tests.
depends on if you failed the class and the regents, if you failed just the regents, we had a prep class right before the August regents. Students who may have failed June and August and are taking again in January are currently enrolled in AIS or support classes. And we're constantly updating that based on student need.
Do you think you have? I guess going back to if there, maybe during the budgeting season, is there something else we can be doing? Do we have to offer something different in the summer? I think we should probably look at that to make sure that our students are.
So we'll group together as we do each budget season, we'll group together with our administrators and have a conversation of what programs they'd like to adjust, refine, implement that might better support students. And those will be conversations, as you said, Erica, that we'll bring out through the budget process too.
Yeah, because passing is fine, but we want them to understand, right? Like, we just want them to understand the content, so.
Can we
Correct,
also-
so that goes to the definition of understand.
Yes,
That's not just something on a test score, that goes to can they apply?
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yep.
That's what, to Lauren's point, are they failing the whole class? Are they failing just the test? I think there is a different differentiation there.
And as well to have, what are the multiple measures of assessment? If we're only assessing Algebra 1 using a multiple choice test, or are we doing more, justifying your thinking and, really problem solving through, different experiences that I think it depends on, some students are going to perform really well in that multiple choice test. And some students will be able to walk you through how to, solve a quadratic instead. So we need to find multiple ways to make sure we know where the students are. And I think the conversation we've been having around grading is not, what is the grade of the student, what is the student's grade, but how are we communicating their progress towards achieving that standard? What is the standard they're working on and how are we communicating progress? Not what we give them for a grade.
Are we tracking the success rate of AIS once they exit the program? So if I was in AIS and now I've exited, did it help me? Have my grades improved? Have I started coming to school? Do we track that?
That's part of, when a student is referred for MTSS, because it could be, right, school avoidance, it could be the grades, and I think this is part of the conversation that we can ask Dr. Roller to help us with for the AIS cutoffs. But all of that is, you wouldn't exit that program, you wouldn't exit maybe a building level counseling with the social worker to make sure that we're supporting you socially and emotionally until we saw you starting to come to school more often.
Yeah, but if you did exit me, if I was exited in 6th grade, how am I performing in the 7th grade? You know, am I failing 7th grade? Am I failing every subject?
We
So-
see students referred multiple times.
I was just wondering if we could track so we can see how effective the program is. And when we have the conversation, I do remember in curriculum, we had a conversation about equity in grading and how things are weighted. I mean, I know that I've been to several conferences on that, and I was completely reluctant until I analyzed Infinite Campus in my grade book and saw how, okay, you know, on 33% tests and 33% quizzes and 33% classwork, you know, if I only give one test and you bomb I just killed your average. So, and if teachers are teaching the same course, are they using the same weighting? So I don't know if you're having.
Stephanie, that's a great question. That's why Lauren at the high school is leading some courageous work there, right? Because grading is pretty pretty sacred to many teachers, right? We're all used to most of us are used to a particular grading style. It also doesn't match often what higher education is looking for. It does match, which means we can't grade it because how are we supposed to? So Lauren looking at communicating progress toward identified outcomes, the difference between that and assessment and feedback and grading is really nuanced, but it's very important.
All right, I think we covered a lot.
Can I just make one more statement? I actually wanted to thank Benita for the presentation. I thought this was one of the cleanest and easiest to read. Where I could see like the trend over the years. I also wanted to say, like, while there's definitely room for improvement, because there's always room for improvement, I think we need to applaud any bit of growth that we had. So I want to say thank you, because I did see growth in many of those and where we were above the regional. So I just want to say thank you for that, because there is a lot of great work that's being done, and whatever supports you guys need to continue that, please ask, because I will help advocate for you in any way that I can.
I think we all help advocate.
Does anyone, I know Lauren, do you have any questions you want to add, or?
Greg, can we go to the next slide?
You want to be a teacher now?
My brain is filled with all this.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
We're all good, thank you.
Thank you, this was great.
Thank you.
For being.
You know what?
I want to thank our administrators who took time away from their. I want to thank our administrators who took time away from their families and personal life this evening. I think the high level overview that you see on that data and what happens within the buildings to implement changes or supports is key. And we couldn't be able to articulate that without the principals who are leading that work. So thank you. So principals, you're more than welcome to stick around for the next part of our meeting, or you can go home and continue data meetings.
We had a question before they go.
Sorry.
It's a really fast one, and it's really not for the principals, but just in general. What?
You gotta hold it.
When do teachers, support staff, administrators need to present their wish list so that they don't have a need that we don't have an opportunity to budget for? So while we're building the budget, when is a good time for them to know that they need to let their team know in advance so that we can incorporate these for next year's budget?
Right, so we're all meeting, we have meetings scheduled for the second week in December. With every administrator and director in the district to review what their wants and needs are for next year.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Jill.
Yep.
Okay. All right, principals, you're more than welcome to stay or go work on data teams.
Good luck, Lauren.
Thank you.
Thank
Nobody
you.
wants to stay and hear my report? No?
Hear the cricket sound. All right, now we're gonna move on to, I guess our superintendent's report, update is next.
Yes, thank you, President Mills. Just a brief report. Following up on our centennial preparations, on Tuesday, October 29th, I met with Lauren Scollins and Beth Gruber to review some historical documents found in her office that have given us a better understanding of the exact date we should use for our centennial celebration of the high school. I want to make sure. Can you hear me or am I muted?
We got you, we got.
Oh, great. Thank you. I apologize. To remain in line with those previous celebrations, we will celebrate the date of the groundbreaking, which occurred in 1926. So we will use that date as our centennial, and we'll be convening a task force to plan out the events to honor this important and meaningful milestone. So please be on the lookout for that invite in the near future. We alluded to this earlier at its most recent meeting held yesterday and the day before. The Board of Regents proposed heard proposed numbers by the New York State Education Department to be considered for implementation, particularly when it comes to pathways to graduation, the role of regents. So among those proposals is a consideration to phase out the regents exams in 2027-2028 school year. Additionally, the state is developing what it calls the New York State Portrait of Graduate, which says it will offer students more options to demonstrate their learning, including projects or internships. So this plan is still being finalized, but officials said they will plan to present it for adoption at the end of this school year. And the changes to the Regents exam requirements are not final until the Board of Regents votes on them, which we expect to happen in 2027. So just so you know, our administration will continue to monitor this and work collaboratively with our faculty to comply with any new requirements. In the realm of safety and security, Amanda Dolce-Moscolano and I met with multiple agencies such as Buchanan Fire Department, Buchanan Police Department, Mohegan Sun Emergency Response, New York State Police, and Westchester County Police to discuss if there was an emergency, how our various agencies would participate in the incident command structure, which delineates everybody's role in responding to particular emergencies, and specifically what a unified command system will look like. So if you think about if we have an incident that requires fire, EMS, police, transportation, New York State transportation, whether it requires town resources, DEC resources, we wanted to make sure that the first time we were having that conversation is not when the emergency happens. So this meeting was the first of that. So action items from that meeting were to schedule a larger tabletop drill and to explore additional interagency opportunities. And I do want to thank all those agencies who do support us to keep our staff, students, and community safe. Today, a meeting was held to begin to plan for our June moving up and graduation ceremonies. We will finalize dates, locations, and inclement weather scenarios for our 5th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade ceremonies by November 20th and communicate that out shortly after that. And then with Election Day occurring yesterday, I received a few emails about schools as election sites. So I'm going to take a little bit of a time to discuss this. In general terms, when a school district elects to share its buildings as a polling place with the county, that school must follow New York State education laws, which state that items such as election or actions such as electioneering or displaying signs of posters is allowed as long as it's not 100 feet from the entrance of the polling place doors. So as superintendent, I must comply with those laws. Yesterday morning, I was on site at Blue Mountain Middle School in the morning for a good bit of time and had our local security monitoring the polling. But when our building is being used as a polling place, we turn into a polling place. That is why many school districts who do that do not have students on site when there is polling done and when they can. Or that's why some schools decide not to allow polling to occur within the buildings. Now, why do schools choose to support the Westchester County Board of Elections? Well, I think we're modeling being good citizens. We're utilizing taxpayer funded buildings to support a civic duty or a civic opportunity. It allows us to reach people where they are. It also is a good model for our students. But I often say that schools are a microcosm of society. Well, now that we're seen as a polling place, the political discourse that is occurring in our country comes onto our school grounds. And so we have to just be mindful of that and have a conversation if we want to continue that. But just wanted to share that the school district during its normal operations follows its visitors to school policy, which has a plethora of information about when you can visit a school, why you can visit a school, when you can be on the grounds. We also have policies that relate to you can't place political signs on school property. That is suspended when we become a polling place. And we would be not only in violation of New York state law if we were to remove people who were electioneering, as an example, but we would also be infringing upon their New York state granted civil rights to do so. So since that's such a new item, it's not customary to have questions during the superintendent's report, but I would yield to any questions on that matter. If
What
the
are
board has
what are
any.
the- What are the consequences of not utilizing that as a polling site?
Well, we lose some of those intangible items such as demonstrating civic participation for our students, providing a service to the community. When I did communicate with our Westchester County Board of Electors last year, and I said I don't want to use BMMS or FGL as a polling place in June, there was an undertone of, well, remember, you were provided by us with some of your election equipment, so we wouldn't want that to come late to you.
Oh, the only reason I'm even asking is because if it's taking away from our resources with our staff and time and people out in front of the school and emails to the principal and all that goes along with that, and we have staff on premises for the day and parents coming in and out. I think you bring up a good point about, like, yeah, it's nice that we have to do this for our community, but it can't take away from the school's resources, in my opinion, but, I don't know, it's just I know that we had our safety team and our security, we had our whole team up there yesterday. Yes, there's no students in school, but it's, it's our we're using our resources.
So I'll continue to study and come back and make recommendations. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody off who wanted to weigh in.
No, if you're, like, let's just say,
Where's
like,
Amanda based regularly?
Amanda's in all of our buildings. But she's,
I thought she was just there. I saw her there.
no.
I asked Amanda,
she's
I
there.
asked Amanda to stay on site all day there.
Right, that's what I was asking.
Yeah. I mean, we can't be, I know our staff can't be measuring 100 feet from the door, you know what I'm saying?
No,
Like
the
that's not-
election.
No, they
people
don't have to
had
be there.
Put the signs up.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Our
if they're
staff
gonna-
members?
No, I'm saying,
saying.
I'm talking about, yeah, but that's not how the day started, right? So the day started with them going to the principal first. So, because that's who's on site. And then it turned into, the election people went to our principal. Like it's. I
That
don't know.
particular case, they didn't know their own
Yeah,
regulations.
it needs to be, yeah, you need to put, yes, there needs to be protocols in advance here because.
But they weren't appropriately trained on what to do
Right.
when something
Yeah,
goes wrong.
let's-
So we
Let's
can
get the
help them.
procedure down and continue to allow people to vote. And see what.
We have to be comfortable with our policy going out the window. Our school policy goes out the window when it's a polling site. That's the thing. We have no policy, we have no jurisdiction, we have no control, and we have staff and parents coming in and out of the building. It's just another thing to think about when you're.
We do that when we allow like the town to use it for sports and stuff like that.
Use it all, they use it all.
Give it,
Wow.
no,
I think
our
it's
policy,
Still our
our
policy.
policy is still overrides.
If we have a no pets on the premise policy,
Our
just
policy
because the town
overrides.
plays soccer there, doesn't mean they get to.
No, but they
override
can
that
still come
policy.
into the building, like,
Yeah, but our policy is still in place.
What she's
Well,
saying
what
is, in
policy
this
was broken
example,
yesterday?
No, not, yep, you cannot have, when
We wouldn't allow
we're in
someone to stand
operational hours of school,
during
you can't have people standing on our property.
What happens is it becomes
I know, I'm
public
just wondering, is that
property and the
considered
school hours?
school hours?
Yeah,
No,
If
because
students aren't there.
we have staff involved, we have staff.
Why don't we let Mike do a
Mhm.
deep dive and get back to us as to
Yeah.
what the procedure is and we can kind of button it up.
It's just it's a situation that's slightly different than our normal course of business as a school.
No, I know, I mean, yeah, they use my building as one and the doors aren't unlocked and people are going in and out, like it's, but then you have people who are. Man, like, there, stationed there to make sure it's fine,
They don't go past the polls.
yeah.
That concludes my superintendent's update. I'll turn it over to Dr. Stephen Garcia for his brief update from the world of personnel, human resources and leadership development.
Yeah, that's always seems like a word salad sometimes.
Mhm.
So just briefly, I know I notified the board and obviously the community that we posted for the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction assessment vacancy that we will have in July. It is now on the online application system, which is through Putnam Northwest BOCES. I also gave notice to all my colleagues in the Lower Hudson Council of School Personnel Administrators, so they're all aware of the openings we have. It will be then added to the December edition of Education Week as an advertisement, which then goes out basically throughout the country. And I think also in Canada. And that Education Week is like the preeminent monthly newspaper for education in the nation. So as of right now, we have 30 applicants that applied in the past week, which is a nice start. The plan is to keep this job posting open until the beginning of January 5th. I mean, I could extend it depending on how many people we have apply. And then there's a cycle of review of the applications with the cabinet members. Then we have an opportunity to interview screen candidates. Eventually, we like to bring it to a stakeholder committee, some semifinalists. Then at the end of the spring, probably around May, we'll have some finalists, which we'll introduce to the Board of Education. But part of the process of understanding a profile of the ideal candidate for Hendrick Hudson will be a series of virtual focus groups in December, and there'll be some notification from the district to the community if they'd like to participate. We just want to get some information of what people think, the needs of the district, the leadership qualities of the next assistant superintendent, some challenges and some hopes and aspirations for our curricular program. I'll be hosting that. And like I said, we'll notify the community before Thanksgiving when that would take place. That will be for parents, and then we're gonna have a similar session for teachers, staff, and then also with our administrators. That hopefully will composite at the end of the day, a nice profile of the ideal candidate that we're looking for. It's just an update on where we stand with that. By the way, when we do the Education Week posting, I'm also going to put in the bottom that we do anticipate the assistant superintendent for PPS opening, which would be July of 2026, and also our Director of Physical Education, Health and Athletic opening, which would actually start in the position would be open in December of 2025. But I just want for people to know, and if people are interested, that we will be looking for some leadership positions beyond this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, especially for casting that wide net to try to get us as many qualified candidates to choose from. So thank you for that. I'll now ask Ms. Jill Figuerella to give her brief update in the as our interim assistant superintendent for business.
Yeah, I only have a couple of things. So again, we mentioned budget talks there and considerations beginning the second week in December. We'll be meeting with all the departments and beginning to build our budget and talking about enrollment and staffing, et cetera. Today, we were able to secure an interest rate for our renewal of our bus bond anticipation notes that are closing next week. They renew once a year, every year in the fall and November. Those are just for the buses, for the vehicles, and that was 3.81%. We had 6 responders, banks responding, so that was a good turnout. And Not to be confused with our energy performance contract, which also secured a pretty good rate of 3.86%. So that one is paid off over 18 years. It's a much longer term borrowing, but that is also a good rate that we received. So that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Ms. Figueroa. And I know that Jill would want me to reiterate that we did adopt the budget calendar tonight, which will lay out our plan for developing the budget. So make sure you look for the best part of that entire process, other than the vote itself, is the all day Saturday line by line. So we look forward to everybody joining us on that Saturday for shared fun. So that concludes our cabinet and superintendent report at this time, President Mills.
Okay, that brings us to our policy readings. We have the second reading of policy 1800, donations, gifts, and grants to the district. Unsolicited gifts and donations.
Make a motion to waive the reading.
Second. All in favor? So this one we are bringing back after our last conversation.
Can we make a small adjustment here?
Yes, we did. No, we took out the piece, if you remember the other day, there was some discrepancy on the $75, like, or is it $74.99 or is it $75.01? So this was something that we've been talking about for a while in facilities, you hear me, in policy. As to, like, before we brought it to the public, we really wanted to make sure that it was very clear as to how much money can be given, especially when we start dealing with class parents. Are we talking about collective or individual? So this states nothing in excess of 75. So 75 is okay. Any individual student cannot give 75.01 to any district employee or board member.
But someone who's a bundler.
Can bundle everyone
Multiple gifts,
75
and they're with.
as long as they label,
parameters of policy.
yes. So the class parent, for example, could take 75 from every person and give that if that was the gift choice.
In addition, this policy also, if you are willing and looking to donate anything to our school district, our appreciation is obviously going to be expressed, but this provides the guidelines to how that is conducted, to make sure that we accept the gift appropriately and that we provide appropriate recognition. And just so you know, donations are not capped at 75%. That is gifts. To individual employees, donations to the district are a different threshold.
Yes.
So get your checkbook.
Does anybody have
Right, right.
questions or anything? Any questions? Motion to approve policy 1800.
Oh, you're good.
Second. All in favor? Okay. Next, the policy, second reading of policy 2160. School district officer and employee code of ethics. Board of Education is committed to.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second. All in favor?
And if I remember correctly, we just wanted to make sure that this aligned with our gifts, donations, and solicitation policy in terms of the
Yes,
threshold as well.
Yes, that was, you can see that there in red.
And the cross reference is there.
Thanks, Brian.
Motion to approve policy 2160.
Second. All in favor? Okay, next up is the first reading, policy 2342, agenda preparation and dissemination. The superintendent.
Make a motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
So this just states what we have been doing, that we just gave a timeline that the agenda should be presented 5 days in advance, at least 5 days in advance for board meetings, except if someone were to ask for an emergency meeting, then it has to be 24 hours in advance. It states that Carmen will be the one who posts the agenda, but it will be superintendent and leadership that helps create the agenda with any input from the additional board members or public that we need. I don't know if I'm missing anything else.
No, this is basically based on law and it's tied to our cross-references 2350 board meeting procedures. And this is a new policy.
I will say that the timeline was a range they gave us. So the least amount of time we had to give, I believe, was 3 days. But we thought that was not enough time for the public and for the board to receive that information, because that would be like Sunday night or Monday or Wednesday. We like the idea that it's out no later than, I mean, Carmen's been really good about trying to do Thursdays, but this gives the leeway that it could still be a Friday before the board meeting on a Wednesday.
I just had a question for clarity. First of all, that includes weekends, I think, because you were just saying Sunday, so that it's not just business days that you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's 5 days, so that would be like the Friday or Wednesday.
Can you just explain the second one, like the, under availability of agenda? The agenda and supporting material, just that line seems a little bit confusing to me. I just want to understand what it means.
Which one? That she's gonna post it, but that it can be changed up to 24 hours before the meeting.
No, under this part.
Yeah, the agenda and supporting
Supporting
material to
material,
be
yeah.
discussed at the board meeting that is permissible to be released. So, meaning, like,
It's on
if it's
board
like a contract,
It's on board now.
yeah, like,
That
so
first part, I get that, but what is the rest of the sentence?
that it's there, 24 hours.
District clerk to the extent practicable, 24 hours before the
So-
meeting.
I think what that's saying, Corey, is that according to the policy language, the board members will receive materials 5 days in advance. The agenda itself will be posted 24 hours before the meeting to the public.
But it's being posted the 5 days, as we said.
To
But
us,
yes,
okay.
Carmen's been really good, like I said, about doing Thursday, but I didn't want to hold her to a Thursday.
Yeah,
like
my
6
question is not
days,
about
yeah.
what we're doing, it's just about the language that's
Yeah.
in here, it feels a little bit confusing. That's what we mean. So we are saying that the agenda is for us and the public, the 5 days in advance.
Because that's what we're practicing, but based
Feels
upon.
more like what.
Well,
Mike
that
just said.
wasn't but the 24 hour, that sentence came from the requirement. The part that had the range,
Mhm.
from the 3 to 7, we made 5.
The rest
To
of
the
it is their
board.
language.
Yes, the rest of it is their language.
I think on a practical level, what this allows us to do, Corey, is let's say we get the information. If we were sticking to that straight 5 days and it's just to the board members, we have a great relationship where the board provides us feedback as we build the agenda to say, hey, could you tweak this? Would you consider this? I see something missing. This doesn't make sense. If we were to limit ourselves where it has to be posted at that 5 days, we might not have the opportunity to update it before the meeting. This language and the threshold, while we say we want to make sure we get the agenda out in 5 days, this language allows us to make those adjustments as needed.
Right, so you are saying that it's to us and then to the public. 24 hours before. You're giving us a chance over the 5 day period of time to make any adjustments. And then it's posted for the public 24 hours before.
No, the public's still gonna get it.
Yeah, so the policy is written that way to allow us to do that, but our practice has been to release to both board and public
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 days ahead of time.
That's the requirement.
But we have a
But
different
we
practice.
are,
Got it.
yes, the
Okay.
requirement is only 24 hours, but again. I
But
don't
we're
think that's
doing
enough.
5.
We're doing,
Right, for everyone,
Or 6, really.
yeah,
Right.
6.
from Thursday to, right. Okay, this language is just,
You have a suggestion to change it?
I mean,
I
No,
just think
'cause-
24 hours doesn't give people enough time to review it if they wanted to come here and speak on something.
I know,
It's
but
got
that's-
piece of
That's
it.
the legal.
That's the legal requirement.
It's legally binding, yeah.
We should, let's confirm that. It is.
Okay,
Okay.
I think we've been asked this question, I've been asked it several times, that is.
We asked it, I think we even asked.
I mean, she's putting it out there. We're not saying we're gonna put it out 24. We're saying like that's the least amount of time that we could. But we're not going to, according to the.
But we're doing
But we're doing-
A special meeting has to be posted. within-
Yeah, 20, yeah, special meeting is only 24 hours too, yeah.
got it. Okay. Thank you.
And actually, 20 special meetings, 24 hours have to the board. Just the board, doesn't have to go to the public. It will, but it only is the board. Remember, this is a meeting of, these are all meetings of the board. So that's where this language is coming from legally. I mean, we want to communicate with the community as much as possible, and we are, but I don't think we're gonna put the district in a predicament to change that and make it our own rule.
Oh, no, I wasn't asking.
Yeah.
I just was asking.
Yeah,
for clarity
I'm just
what I
saying.
meant.
Okay, we'll bring that one back. First reading, policy 2350, board meeting procedures.
Motion waive reading.
Second. All in favor, yeah.
So this just puts through the order so that you would see on board docs, for the most part, the order of our meeting. And Carmen did a great job of fact checking with our board docs to make sure the order that you see here is the order that we have really been following. And that you can also change it if you wanted to by a vote on the board. But this is, I guess I'd look through, just make sure we're not missing any parts, but I believe Carmen did. Guess I go through there.
Yeah, it explains that it's a vote. If you would, we can change it with a vote. And we'll bring that one back.
I have a question.
Yep.
Yeah,
Or should we have, when we read the policies or?
I think that was,
Or is that under?
That's committee report, right?
Oh, okay.
Or no, policy update, committee reports and.
I would think yes, yeah. Because we sometimes don't always have a policy,
Oh.
but this year we have a lot of policies.
Okay.
The other times we have not.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Should we make committee reports before board comment in business? Because we're going to do this first, or if we're going to business, you know what I'm saying?
I think that we should actually put,
I would just put policy
I think we should put policy readings and put as needed
between 11 and 12.
between 11 and 12.
Good call. See, this is why we need you. We need another set of eyes.
Okay, we'll bring that one back next meeting.
I would encourage us, once we go through this Herculean policy review, that we consider a regular standing schedule for policy review so that you're constantly doing it a little at a time.
We have it written into the policy now, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Policy about
I just need you
policy.
to write the regs.
We have to. We have to do that.
To write the wrongs.
Okay, this is policy 2351, quorum. A majority of the members of the Board of Education will constitute a quorum for the transaction of the business of a regular meeting. Should there be fewer?
Motion to waive
Motion
reading.
waive reading.
Second.
Sorry, I was reading.
I was just staring at you.
So this explains,
Wait, did we do a second on a vote on that?
Oh, I seconded.
all in favor? This is just establishing what a quorum is for our board.
Which is what? For our viewers at home.
Fewer than 4 members.
No, 4 members would be quorum. It says, should there be fewer than?
It also explains when we have to set a new time. In case.
Yeah, if there's
in case
fewer
we
than
can't show
4.
up. Yes, we have to have.
We have a new meeting. And then if anything is being voted on, you have whatever the majority is of the amount of people that you have at that time.
Yeah, the only thing on this I would say is we should cross, it's policy 2340 is listed in the policy, Carmen. We probably should move it to the, as a cross reference at the bottom, just so it's not just in the wording.
Amelia, I think,
Do you see that?
I don't know if I misheard you or I don't understand it. But it's not the majority of who's there, it's the majority of the board. So if only 4 people are there, it would have to be a unanimous vote to pass.
I believe so.
It wouldn't be the majority, it wouldn't be.
Yes. Yes.
You have to have
Correct.
all-
So
Yes.
if there was an action that was 2-2 at the table, that action would not pass. And the board would actually have to consider whether they wanted to bring that action back again at the next meeting. And that would have to be a motion in and of itself. So let's say we decide to bring an agenda item to the table for board action, let's say on adopting the professional learning plan, and we only had 4 members, two members voted yay, 2 members voted nay. That that action or resolution fails, it does not pass. And so to bring that back to approve it, you would have to make another motion to approve that, bringing that back. Anyway, hopefully we don't ever get to that point, but just geeking out a little bit.
All right, thank you. We're gonna bring this one back. The next one is first reading, policy 5131. Homeless children.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second,
All in favor?
this policy mainly like defines what a homeless child, like how you would define that. It also states that a child can continue to attend school during that time, even if it's out of the town lines. Pretty much everything in here is a law,
Yes.
and this was read through by, I remember, Miss Lisa Shuckman, along with the lawyers.
Municipal and our attorneys.
Yes.
Is there a reason this one doesn't have like a R required or L logo on the top? That,
Why?
I was just wondering that, but it is required for every New York State school district to have.
Because this was an existing ones and we didn't
So I've
add
heard
that.
it's always helpful. This one's a required policy.
This is required, yes.
We did have this one, but you'll see all the additions in the red and all the strike throughs in red. As to the language they changed.
Anytime we receive federal funds or apply for a federal or state grant, they want us to affirm that we do have an active McKinney-Vento, we have a policy that is in line with McKinney-Vento regulations.
Technically could approve this one tonight, but I think we'll just bring it back to approve the next time. Because it's a required policy that it's all legalese.
Well, we still have the other one in place, correct? At this time, this is just going, we already have one. We're just gonna update it, essentially, right?
Someone has a comment, maybe there's.
Yeah.
And then this is, upon recommendation of the policy committee, the Board of Education of the Hendrick Hudson School District hereby conducts the.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second,
The regs are just not attached,
here, I have it here.
so they're not attached for the public.
Oh, okay. So it's the regulation, or it's the next one.
5131R.
Yeah. Yes, it's not posted there, but, so that's just the regulation.
Yeah, this is the procedures.
So I have a question. Can we post this retroactively here and then we'll post it again next meeting for the upcoming meeting for the approval, right? This way, if anybody wants access to it in advance, they can get that. Okay, thank you, Con.
This explains how we, the transportation pieces, the guardian, how we establish the guardians, the addresses, that's all outlined in this, as far as the rest. And again, that's also legal.
Yeah, that came straight from this, but no attorney again.
We didn't have that before.
No, we did not have this before, no, this is a first reading, like brand new, but,
So
yeah, the regulation, yeah.
If anyone's looking to read these regulations, tomorrow they will be up on board docs and then under this meeting, and then when we post for the following meeting for the second reading, they'll be
Up again.
put up there again.
The regulation goes with the other policies.
Yes,
It's like.
it's like the rules for it, yeah.
Great job on policy.
We're in the 5,000, yeah, guys. Thank God.
We could all-
Respect that. No, no.
We just got fours.
We got the fours.
We got the four.
And your goal is to get to what?
4 and 5.
Fours and fives.
Yeah.
Fours are allowed.
Our. Awesome.
It's a policy committee.
Okay, so we're moving on to, board comments, new business. Anyone have any? Okay, I'm gonna take the time because I received this tonight. I think this is an appropriate spot to do it, to do recognition. The music department was kind enough to share with the board that they attended the New York State School Music Association Zone 11 Area All-State Music Festival. And this is based on musical achievement at the regional level. and it was held, this weekend in New Rochelle High School. And these are students, and I think I'm gonna read their names, actually. I just wanna make sure that they're recognized. And this is under the direction of Lauren Morbido, Erica Denler, who else is in here? I think Ben Akrish and Kim Duncan. Right, did I leave anyone off?
Yeah, you have Ben, right?
Yes, there's 4. Yes, okay, so in the zone 11 area also band, we had Simon Eichenholz, Nico Bianchi, Mia Goodnow, and Costa Leolitos. This is the All-State Symphony Orchestra with Sophia Jimdar. And then in the mixed chorus was Morgan Saba, Nava Minicino, Alex Numeroff, Caleb Podizak, Sophia Solinsky, Sage Faulkner, Artie Rajesh Sikar, Addison Valentino, Henry Ritter, Aiden Akhtar, Alec Elkin. Then there was the area all-state band. These are the addendum. That was, so that's the students that participated. That's the students that participated, and I'll share this with you. We can pass it around as the board, but I'm grateful that they shared this with us, so we can see, what our students are working on, and, this is a great achievement for them. My son got to participate in one of these, a few years ago, and it was wonderful, so. Thank you for sharing those. Congratulations to the students. All right. Oh, and I have one other thing that could be under committee reports. I think. I want to move on to committee reports. Sure. Okay. Anyone have anything? So I'm going to share PT advocacy shared with me, something that they would like me to read tonight. So this is about their mental health, program that's coming up. The Hennepin PTA Advocacy Committee is very pleased to announce 2 important mental health workshops presented by licensed mental health counselor Danielle Vallis, a former college athlete and high school coach who specializes in counseling teens and young adults. The National Alliance on Mental Illness reports 1 in 6 kids ages 6 to 17 in the US experience a mental health disorder, and suicide remains the second leading cause of death among all US children ages 10 to 14. These workshops will provide valuable information to both our high school students and the family and friends who love and support them. For the high school student, Hendrick Hudson High School students on Monday, 11/18/2024 from 7 to 8 p.m., students are invited to join Ms. Vallis to explore the various stressors they may currently be experiencing, including school parent expectations, sports, relationships, and social media. Teens will hear about the importance of their emotions and learn a variety of coping skills to help them navigate their big emotions in an early intervention and prevention webinar. Then open to all Hen Hunt community members. So this is any community member at all. They're presenting on Monday, 11/18 from 8 to 9 p.m. From identifying the effects of social media and the COVID-19 pandemic, understanding the daily pressures they face to overcoming stigma. There's lots to unpack around teen mental health. Ms. Vallis will empower participants to notice the red flags and warning signs, start the conversation, and have a toolbox to best support the young people in their lives. It says both programs will also run via Zoom, so the link will follow. But I told them I would share this because it's really important. They put a lot of time and effort. I think all the PTAs are actually supporting them in this. So they're very excited to bring it here.
Speaking of PTA, SEPTA has their next meeting on November 19th, and that's going to have the reading, an introduction to the reading program. So we were saying if anyone missed like a literacy night, that might be a good one to go to see a presentation on that. And then for the elementary PTA, there will be a Spirit Week happening next week. And then 5th grade committee has a fundraiser that you can find more information about the fall flannel fund. I think it's I think it's actually flannel football fun.
That's on Friday, right?
That's on Friday the 15th. There is a website for the fifth grade committee that you can go to and see all the different events that are happening there too.
I'm assuming the advocacy info that you just shared is gonna be emailed out by them.
Assuming.
Yeah.
Hope so.
Usually, I was trying to write it fast and I.
Oh, I can also forward it to you. It's,
Okay.
it's in this beautiful email that they shared.
Okay.
And they'll send it with a link too, so if you want
Yeah.
to join, you can send it. You can't meet in person.
The other thing is that there's a few guidance events coming up for students and families. And I actually saw that there's something at the Hennon Library that's gonna be done by our guidance department, on the 14th for new families of Hendrick Hudson, so. Followed by a parent panel on.
I think sections also having a fundraiser on a night.
Oh, yes, on Saturday, from the hours of 4 to 8, you can go to Chipotle and order and just say you're ordering, like, from Hen Hud, and money will be kicked back to them. That is this Saturday, from 4 to 8, they get, 20 or 25% back. And it has to be in person.
Yeah.
You can't do DoorDash delivery, it has to be in person. Why I know this,
Cause you're ready to go, cause I'm ready to go. All right, and Veterans Day, all schools are closed on Monday.
I did the West, advocacy meeting on Monday. I mean, I did it last month and this month. This month was the second installment of them talking about all the issues that they're gonna, advocate for. And so they're still actually working on going back and taking our feedback. So after the next meeting, I'll have something I can share with everybody, that is basically aligned on all the issues that, they're gonna push for.
And Lauren and I attended on the 28th, Westchester Putnam School Board Association roundtable, which was great. We got to be in different groups and talk to the boards, so.
Do we want to talk about how we went to the VA hospital?
Oh, yeah.
We did that on Tuesday also, right? I should tell them.
Yeah.
Corey, Jeremy and I went to the VA hospital
With
with
money.
Mr. Trombley. And we served coffee and donuts in Danish to some of the residents there. Got to chat with them and stuff.
I did their morning stretch with them.
Oh, yeah, morning stretch.
I mean, I did it. I don't know if you guys.
I did it too.
It was intense. And yes, Mike, you did it while you were dealing with,
Yeah.
Several
yeah, there was
things
a lot
at
of
the same
things going
time.
On that day.
um,
Oh, and then the haunted high
That's
school was at night, which was good. So that was fun, and the concert and stuff. So,
It was pumpkin pops, was great.
yeah, Eric and I.
that is a
people
great
at the
event.
door.
It's my first time there. It was so nice. It's
Mhm.
such a great display of the music department.
Oh, tomorrow night, there's gonna be a virtual meeting.
I was just
Yeah.
about to say that. That was my last bit.
Sorry.
We have a virtual meet and greet tomorrow for anyone listening, watching. It was actually shared on Facebook again. We opened it up, so you don't have to sign up 24 hours in advance. So, but it would be, it is helpful for people to sign up so that we know what to anticipate. So,
And so I can provide them with the link.
yes, that way you can get the link to join.
And I just wanted to do a special congratulations to Lauren for running a marathon.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
Mr.
I
Trombley, are we
retired.
going to the, we're playing seniors tomorrow morning as well?
That was this.
We are going to be rescheduling as to not get them sick.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's what I was assuming.
Yes. And Shannon's next week.
Carmen,
All right.
Carmen will read.
Okay.
I think we got through everything. Covered a lot. All right, guys, anyone like to make a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close